Hello there, and welcome back to another dev interview. Today, it's me and Scotty J are going to have some burning questions for Kris Zierhut, one of the members of the classic WoW, the Wrathichian classic development team. Chris, how's it going?
It's going well. Good.
Amazing, amazing. We have a bunch of questions. Obviously, we're a week out from launch? Is it next week?
Although it's less than a week now, right? We're looking at 5 days. Yes.
I'm really
Very soon.
excited. I love Wrath King, it's my favorite. It's superb.
Yeah, I'm very excited as well.
Everyone is. Yeah, 5 days seems crazy. I can't believe that it's this close.
Yeah. Every day I have new friends coming out of the woodwork saying, "Hey, are you playing Wrath Lich King? Is there room for in your guild? Can I join your raid team?" Every day new people contacting me. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, my brother, who hadn't played for many years, he messaged me, was like, "Oh, I heard Wrath's coming back." It's like, yeah. He's like, "Oh no." All right, cool. Well, we'll dive into the first one. Pretty simple question, I guess, for you, Chris. One thing that's kind of different this time around with Wrath Lich King and TBC is with TBC, when it was originally announced, we had a list of phases which came out, and it was kind of announced what is coming and all the different phases, which did change over time due to feedback and whatnot. And for Wrath, we haven't really had that officially, at least. So could you talk a little bit about Wrath Classic
Sure.
phases?
We'll have to get you that information. I think we know exactly what those phases are going to be. So obviously we're starting at the beginning with launch. Initially, no raids are available, just dungeons available. Winter Grasp is available from day one. As soon as you hit level 71, you can get in there. And then a week later, a week after, I think it's Thursday after launch, the raids will become available. And that includes the Vault of Archivon. Which you'll be able to get to if someone on your server has one Winter Grasp. And then the raids will be Naxxramas, the Malgos raid in Eye of Eternity, and the Sartharian encounter. So there's be an initial set of raids, and then we'll move into the next phase. We'll be opening up Ulduar, which is one of my favorite raids of all time. It's just got such amazing architecture and these kind of quirky hard modes where you have to do something special to trigger the harder difficulty of the boss. It was just really a fantastic experience the first time around that so few of our players actually got to see the end of it in the original Wrath of Lich King. People went back later with higher level characters to see it, but very, very few people, we have the data, got to see all the way through to Yogg-Saron and experience all those battles at level. So I think for a lot of people, it's going to be a novel, exciting experience seeing that. And then we'll follow up the Trial of the Crusader. One change that we decided to make involving Trial of Crusader and Ulduar is all of the item levels of the items that drop in Ulduar is going to be increased, particularly much more so on the drops from the hard modes, so that Ulduar kind of lasts a little bit longer and competes better with Trial of the Crusader. Our goal there is that items from heroic or hard mode Ulduar bosses will be a little better than the items you get out of normal Trial of the Crusader. So when you've got your guild of people, it's like, hey, I want to go back and still do those hard modes in Ulduar. The first time around, people are like, yeah, this loot here is better. I don't want to go. This time, like, oh yeah, there's a best in slot item for me. There's this really amazing item for me that I could get off that hard mode. Let's go back. Let's beat it. Let's do Yogg-Saron Zero Lights. Let's do that crazy difficult stuff. So Trial of Crusader then will be in Ulduar kind of running at the same time a little bit there. And then finally after Trial of the Crusader, which also includes one new dungeon, the final raid tier will be Icecrown Citadel, which has 3 new dungeons. And of course, that's the battle all the way through to fight the Lich King himself. It's kind of the whole story of Arthas from beginning to end gets told in Northrend, and that's kind of the final chapter.
Where are the dragons going to slot in there? So we've got obviously Onyxia. I assume we're getting Onyxia.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Onyxia, if I remember correctly. So I'm not 100% on this one. Onyxia comes in right between Ulduar and Trial of Crusader, or around there. It's around Trial of Crusader. I honestly don't remember because I always forget about the Onyxia anniversary. It's kind of the side thing. And of course, we have the final dragon encounter at the end after Icecrown Citadel, and that will happen sometime after Icecrown Citadel opens. We don't have the exact calendar on that side, I don't think.
Will that be an individual phase? So Ruby Sanctum, yeah, will that
I don't
be
think,
like a
yeah.
phase 5, or is it just going to be like an addition?
It'll be an addition. Like we might, I can't say for sure yet because we haven't figured out all the details, but I can imagine we'll have it all of the data set up the same time Ice Crown Citadel's data set up, but we'll have an unlock at some later date where we can just unlock your ability to go there. That's probably how I imagine it would work. Yeah. And then Ruby Sanctum is kind of that final chapter on Wrath of the Lich King.
Cool. So while we're talking about sort of timeline in general, obviously with TBC basically coming to a close now, it was actually just under a year, I believe, between TBC launching and then the final phase hitting as well. So when Sunwell opened, obviously to some that seemed a bit quick, to others it was just right. You know, obviously you're never going to be able to please everyone. We know that. Do we expect a similar amount of time in Northrend?
I think we're planning on taking longer this time. Like it's going to be, I think we're thinking more like closer, not quite a year and a half, I think, but definitely longer than we took on Burning Crusade to go through it all. We felt like some of the phases of Burning Crusade we went through maybe a little bit too fast, so we're doing a little bit more measured pace for Sunwell for Ice Cream, for Wrath of the Lich King.
That's cool. And you mentioned obviously about the Ulduar buffing the items. You know, that's been well received, and that's going to have a number of changes, you know, to classes because they're going to have access to more armor pen, for example, or more crit or more haste, whatever. Is that set in stone? You know, is that are we doing that now? You know, before it was just an idea, wasn't it?
Right. So we tried a few different ideas. I can kind of walk you through the process in that. We knew that we felt very strongly that the first time around, Ulduar didn't really get the room to breathe and to really get everybody to see the end of it. It got kind of cut off by Trial of the Crusader. So we knew we wanted to make some kind of a change to make Ulduar last longer. And the first idea we floated, which was my idea, I'll take ownership of it, was that, well, what if we took the Trial of the Crusader items and we lowered their item level a little bit so that Ulduar lasted longer, and then what make us lower Ice Crown Citadel item levels a little bit as well. And the downside to that is that a lot of people in the community are looking forward to their characters kind of getting into that overpowered state at the end of Wrath of the Lich King, where their stats are just so crazy high that ridiculous things start happening. I have to admit, as the system designer, the guy who comes up with the numbers, and I actually came up with all the original numbers for Wrath of the Lich King and balanced all those, I swore we are not going to need something like Sunwell Radiance again. We're not going to have a debuff that reduces everybody's dodge chance or anything like that. So I tried to plan to make sure it wouldn't happen. We had more raid tiers and more hard modes happen during Wrath of the Lich King than was planned back, you know, when we were first building it. Kind of the ideas grew as we built the expansion. So I was trying to fix that. I'll admit that. So players didn't like that when we decided instead, well, make it a bonus, right? That's our design philosophy, lean into that. So instead, we're raising the item level on Ulduar drops, which sounds crazier than it is. The plan is to raise the item level on the normal Ulduar drops by 6 item levels, which actually is very reasonable because otherwise the Ulduar 25 drops are the exact same item level as Kel'Thuzad drops. And I even remember back when I first did Ulduar, it's like, oh, this is a little bit disappointing. I've got something just as good off Kel'Thuzad as what this guy just dropped. Like, why are we doing this new thing, right? So raising those up 6 actually feels more appropriate. And then only 2/3 of the bosses even have hard modes. And they only drop 1 item a week. And that 1 item being now 13 more item levels higher means that item is crazy powerful compared to everything else you can get, but you get very few of them. You got to decide carefully, who do they go to? What do you use them for? And you look forward to them. So it sounds like it's a lot of increased power, but it's not a tremendous amount. It actually makes the whole expansion flow better.
Is that across the board? Sorry, is that 10 man as well? It's 10 and 25.
10, yes, 10 will get the exact same change.
Okay, that's cool.
Yes, 10 will get in terms of the bump up, not what its item level will be. Just to elaborate more on some of those ideas, one of the ideas that we floated also, because we're floating different ideas in the community because we wanted to get community feedback, find out what do people like, what do they think is a bad idea. One of the ideas we floated was, what if 10 and 25 shared a lockout? And part of that motivation was we wanted to say, well, what if we could make 10-player loot the exact same loot as 25-player loot, the same item level? So it always been like 10 loot was worse, you know, and in our philosophy back then. And the more mature philosophy from the mainline game has been that, you know, it doesn't matter what your raid size is, you get the same power loot either way. So we were trying that idea out, but we didn't want to make people unable to do both 10 and 25 because some people, they have different groups of people they play with. Yeah, I play with my, you know, Friday night buddies doing 10, and then I do them with my serious team. We do the 25s. It's, you know, people wanted to still have those social groups. We didn't mess that up, and that required the 10-player loot staying not as good as the 25 loot. But we are going to make a change. When Ulduar unlocks, the loot that drops in the 10-player raids is going to be replaced with the same loot that drops in the 25 player raids. So that when you decide you want to go back and farm the instances you've already defeated, you actually can go back for better items. There's more incentive to go back and try to get those last few things you didn't get off Kel'Thuzad and Naxxramas, or you didn't get off Malygos, etc. And we think that'll help people, the first tier, live a little bit longer, that people will be more willing to go back, gear up new characters, do alts, have more social stuff if they can go back with only 10 instead of 25 to get still very powerful and relevant items. And then the idea of what we're going to do is, well, what happens to all those items that dropped in 10-player Naxxramas and 10-player Malygos and 10-player Sartharian? Those are going to move to drops in the heroic dungeons from an increased difficulty. You'll be able to increase the difficulty of heroic dungeons to get better drops and more badges, more emblems, I should say, off the bosses. It's a change we're making. It's borrowing a little bit from the future game, but we think is going to be really exciting and give all of that content more room to live and grow and be relevant.
That's incredible. That's like information overload. My brain,
Like
my brain.
Sorry, you'll have to parse that whole thing. But
yeah.
I'm talking about this for the first time. By the way, it's the first time we're sharing this, but I got to go in for my team to talk about it.
That is fantastic. I think that's perfect. One more thing, and then sorry, I'll let Mr. GM.
Oh, you're good.
So when we're talking about the increased item level in Alduar, I know it might seem quite insignificant in terms of it's only going to be a buff to certain classes for a short while until then it balances out again by the time we get into TOC. But do you think we'll ever see a time where, like retail throughout the expansion, each patch they'll be tuning different coefficients, spell coefficients, ratings and stuff like that? Do you think we'll ever see that to try and create more balance among the classes, but in Classic?
I think for Wrath of the Lich King, that isn't the plan, to do that kind of fine tuning. I was part of the team that did that. We did every patch. We tuned things up, we tuned things down, we tweaked them a lot. And I think it makes players get a little exhausted with the game. Like, am I good this time? Did they nerf me? It creates a lot of anxiety in players when you're doing that constantly. I think so we're in a better place if we don't do that constantly. And so that's part of why we're using the balance from the final patch of Wrath of the Lich King rather than doing the balance bit by bit. In particular, Death Knights, we know, went out the door really strong. I talk about why in my video with Tom Chilton, if you want to watch that video. But Death Knights went out there really strong, and players kept finding creative ways to make them do way more damage or tank better than we ever intended. So they got brought down several times to put them in a reasonable place. They're still really strong. People are leveling up by soloing Blood Furnace on Blood Death Knights right now. So they're very strong. They're very capable, but we brought them to a more reasonable place. And some other classes had some problems where they were too strong or too weak, and that's all fixed. Another good example of that is Death Knights raised the bar on AoE damage when they were released. And so we added the AoE capabilities to several other classes and specializations that didn't have them at launch. So that end patch is a better place for us instead of being in a place where things are kind of wobbly early on. All of that said, if it turns out that some class is so weak that no one wants to bring them, or so strong that they replace everyone else, that's when we would step in and say, okay, we've got to do something to fix this.
That's normally the class I'm playing, and it doesn't matter what one it is either, which is weird. So, no, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
Breaking news. I love that. That's amazing.
Mm.
Okay, so I guess kind of switching gears completely from that.
Sure.
Season of Mastery, obviously wrapping up now with Naxxramas and things like that. I guess a lot of people, I kind of asked on Twitter and stuff like that. A lot of people are curious about what's going on with transferring from Season of Mastery and if there's any more updates on that, because I believe it was announced you could transfer to Wrath as well.
We are working on that. We were not able to get that working before Wrath of the Lich King launch. We have a lot of priorities on our plate, things we're trying to get going, and we want people to be able to transfer from Season of Mastery into Wrath of the Lich King if that's what they choose. Right? They don't have to, but they can, and they just weren't able to get that done in time. It's something we want to do, though. It's something we're looking forward to in the future.
Awesome. One thing that came out recently that was completely out of nowhere, and honestly, I absolutely love it, and I think the community was pretty happy about it too, was the crossover with the Death Knight starting zone and that mount that came along, and that was honestly great. Is that something we could see potentially in the future as well? I do love the crossover between it. I'm sure, no doubt, there was a lot of people who were just, retail players who did dive into Classic.
Right.
It
brought a lot of people from the modern game to go try out Classic, and some of them stuck around, so it works. They're now playing and joining guilds and gearing up their Death Knights and having a blast. So I think it was super successful. We were really excited about it, and we were really excited about the idea of doing that in the future. But I really can't tell you anything about what's happened now because nothing yet is planned.
Excellent, excellent. Well, hopefully something. All right. Here comes the big ones for you, Kris.
So I know it's coming.
Yeah, a lot of people, as I said, asked on Twitter, and honestly, 95% of the questions were this, and I guess it's kind of a two-part. So the first part is, do you think the redesigned Dungeon Finder that was added in Wrathichian Classic is a success, and how do you feel about that general system and how that's going so far? And obviously, as well, will we ever see the random Dungeon Finder from patch 3.3 in Wrathichian Classic at any point?
Okay, there's a lot to that question. So first, the improved looking for group tool, it's a work in progress. It's something we're trying to refine and improve based on feedback. So we took a look at all that feedback we saw online, all the problems people had with it, the bugs. There were definitely some bugs with it we're fixing, and we're committed to improving that tool, making it better as much as we can over time as we collect feedback. It's really important to us that tool work really well. I've used the looking for group channel and mods on mainline to help find groups the same way. So I'm very attuned to that. Like, what are the things we're looking for? What do we think will work best to help people reach out to other people on their server, find people to group with, make groups, and get into dungeons. So we definitely want to make that tool as good as we can. And I've been working a little with the engineer responsible for it to make it as good as we can make it. That said, looking for dungeon, the tool is a very divisive topic, obviously. There are some people who passionately believe that we should not have it, and there's some people who just as passionately believe that we should have it. So it's a really, can you win? You can't really win that conflict. So we have to look into what it is that we value about Classic. And one of our most important values about the Classic experience is the social experience of meeting new people, building parties, building raids, building guilds, building social networks between guilds that you're cooperating, and all these people you know on your server, the people that you contact with on social media and communicate with and organize raids with. We want to keep that as strong as we can make it. That's our core value. If our core value is we want to get people into dungeons and have them, go through content and be able to play as much as they want, then we would say, okay, we do want LFD. But if our core value is that we want to keep the social experience as strong as we can possibly make it, then LFD is something that feels risky to us for Classic. It's a fantastic tool for the modern game, which has taken many more steps in the direction of letting people play cross server. But where Classic is, it would change things in a way we don't think would be healthy for the Classic community. There are other reasons for not doing it. If we were to put in the LFD tool right at the beginning of Classic, it would fundamentally change how you gear up your character. It would fundamentally change the experience and feel of those first few weeks on Classic, the Classic Lich King, because you can do more dungeons, you can do them faster, you can do the same dungeon multiple times per day if you just keep on chaining through heroics. People would gear up much, much faster. They would exhaust the content much, much faster. They go bored with it much faster. So we think there's risks just from the recreating the experience of Wrath Lich King as it was looking for dungeon at launch could, change that. It would be a different experience. But I do have some things that we are doing to help the experience for looking for dungeon, which is another thing that I'm talking about this week for the first time with the press. So we're borrowing an idea that came from later expansions, from the future looking for dungeon tool that was used in Cataclysm and beyond, which is we started giving rewards for tanks and healers when they were in shortage. So if you queued for looking for dungeon, there was always a complaint, there's not enough tanks and healers. We have a bunch of DPS sitting here for hours looking for one, right? So if you are a tank or a healer and you complete a Wrath of the Lich King dungeon, when you kill the final boss, if the algorithm that I put together identifies you were the tank or you were the healer, you will receive an extra reward bag. The reward bag will contain consumables, as well as a small chance at a pet or mount. And the idea here is if tanks and healers can get their consumables that they need to go to raids each week from going to heroic dungeons or regular dungeons, then they don't need to be out in the world farming for those things instead, or on an alt farming for those things. So there'll be more tanks and healers in the dungeon queues or in the groups looking for dungeons. So everyone will have an easier time getting a dungeon by increasing that supply of tanks and healers. and that's
Wow.
already implemented in Wrathichian for launch.
You're giving us too much information. I can't handle it.
Chris, I gotta ask, what's the mount?
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's similar to what was done in later expansions. It draws from amounts from previous expansions that you can get. So there is a very, 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 very tiny chance of Baron Rivendare's mount, but it's there because there's always a tiny chance. Even like the Cataclysm LFD tool had a very small chance of Baron Rivendare's mount, as well as the mounts from trying to remember the other mounts. The mount from Kael'thas and the mount from Sethek Halls. Those three are all possible for the mounts, and there's a bunch of pets that are also very hard to get that are available that way.
Well, yeah, we're all re-rolling,
but it's a small chance. It's a small chance. Yeah.
That's
if
incredible.
that makes more people make tanks or more healers, so that more people can do dungeons, that's fantastic.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Can we just have random dungeon finder though? I mean, you can tell what camp I'm in. I just want it. I just want it, and I'm not scared to say it. You know?
Yeah, I understand. I understand why you want it. But right now the plan is not to put it into the game.
Okay, that's fair enough. So what about the pet from the achievement? Because it was mentioned in I think one of the very first development updates that you've not forgot about Perky. I think that's his name, Perky Pug. What's going on with that?
Yes, we will find a way to deliver to the Perky Pug using some of the same techniques that we're using to identify who the tank and healer is. Right. We can use that to keep track of how many times you've gone to a dungeon.
Okay, cool.
It has not yet been implemented though, so it's not in yet, but we will get it in.
But it will be in. Okay, that's cool. So slightly off topic, but it's something that you mentioned yourself about Death Knight solo in Blood Furnace. So I'm about to become one of the most hated people on YouTube, but to be fair, it can't get much worse than it is. So a lot of people are already planning how they're going to level, to 80, what they're going to do in Wrath. And obviously you would have seen yourself and you'll all be aware, solo in Utgard Keep, solo in Nexus, solo in Old Kingdom, all of this, with very, very high-end TBC gear. Seems like a very popular way. Is this something that is like, it's just going to be left as it is? Because I know there's been a lot of changes to ways of getting XP. Like, for example, stacking up on the fishing item from TBC, that got changed. So, it's more like, are we safe to prep? And like, that side of things is not going to get nerfed? Or was it not on your radar and I've just ruined it for everyone?
Nothing is on my radar about that. We don't have a big problem with people doing that. At least I don't. If you can find ways to use all the gear that you earned from someone Black Temple to go through and solo a dungeon as a tank, then have a blast, have fun. I'm not sure it's going to be the fastest way to get to max level personally. I think you probably get there faster working with a team of other people. But if that's what's entertaining for you, we're not here to stop you from having your fun. Let's see. I did have something else I was going to say on that. I do want to point out that those rewards for being a tank and healer do require you to be in a group. So if you're solo tanking, you will not have a chance at those rewards. You'll need to bring a group with you to have a chance at those rewards.
Okay. And so just on that, sorry, going back. So do you have to be using the LFG tool, or technically could you put a guild group together and you'll still get the reward?
You could put any group together. It doesn't have any knowledge, because the LFG tool is just a tool to help you find friends. It's not a contract. It's not putting you in the dungeon. So any group you put together.
Okay, cool.
Excellent. Amazing. So one thing that was mentioned a while back, there was, I believe it was a change in philosophy or something like that with the Wrathichian built-in quest helper. I believe originally it wasn't planned, and then I think it came out that there's potentially coming eventually. Do you have any updates on that one?
I know that's something we have as a work in progress. It just was more work to get it back working correctly than we had time to get done to get Wrathichian out. Initially, our thought was, it wasn't something we had at launch, so it's not something we should try to have in Lich King at launch. It was added later, really close to the launch of the next expansion. It was kind of part of like I was there for the process of putting it in. That UI change was made as part of the run up to the next expansion and part of the preparation for it. That said, though, players really want it. Players are using it a lot. It's almost universal that players are using mods to fill that same role, and the mods just aren't quite as good as the built-in UI. So we decided, after really thinking about it more, that we're okay with putting it in. We just didn't have time to get it ready for launch.
Excellent, thank you.
I've got a very biased one. So I'm playing on. I can't help it. I'm sorry. So I'm playing on the fresh servers, the fresh Wrath servers, which, by the way, amazing decision to put them on. Put them out. Absolutely loving it. Probably the best time I've had on Classic since it launched, like hands down. So absolutely loving it. How do you feel that it's received? I know it's a bit of a broad question, but do you feel like, has it been received well enough that potentially if we was to go into Cataclysm or wherever we go next, that we might see more of them?
Yeah, I think we will keep on doing it. I think Cataclysm actually, I'm speaking a little bit of the future, but remembering the first time Cataclysm came out, because it changed all the quests out in the world. I leveled up a new character from level 1 during Cataclysm, and on the side for my main character, but to experience all that stuff and to see it. So I think if there's any expansion is most appropriate to, that's the one. But that's the future. But I'm sure because of the popularity, because of the very positive reception, that's something we will definitely be wanting to do for each expansion probably.
Amazing.
That's brilliant to hear. Do you want to end with your last question, because it's probably going to be a big one?
Well,
what's coming at me?
Well, we could do 2. I reckon because the first one's just going to be just a real quickie.
I actually already know the answer to it, so I weren't going to waste time, but I will anyway. Sorry, it's yours. Go. I just know because I've just watched Brian Birmingham.
What? There's more interview. Oh no! All right. Well, either way, we'll repeat it. So Joyous Journeys, obviously that was it, 50% buffed XP, amazing. Honestly, I'm sure it brought a lot of people in. It brought me back leveling again during that time. Is this something we might see again in the future to promote people leveling ults?
We definitely really liked the reception for Joyous Journeys. I've been leveling up characters at Joyous Journeys too, so I've had a first-hand experience of feeling what it feels like. I think we were concerned that giving a large XP buff like that might damage the flow of questing, right? That you might kind of level up too fast and the quest flow would just get messed up. And honestly, I've been leveling a character and it feels fantastic. It works well. It means you can skip some quests. It means you don't do it every zone, but that's fine. So I think we're likely to consider doing that in the future. It's something we're talking about doing again in the future. We like the reception, but I can't promise anything. But it is something we really thought worked well.
Amazing. Thank you.
Definitely.
All right, last one, Kris. You ready? It's a biggie. So Season of Mastery, obviously wrapping up now as well. So I guess it's a 2-part. So what's next for Season of Mastery in regards to, is it going to be a TBC Season of Mastery or something like that? And then obviously elephant in the room, Cataclysm Classic survey came out. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's speculating what's going to go on. So what's the kind of thoughts on what's next for Wrathichian Classic after obviously Arthas and the true endgame of Ruby Sanctum is defeated?
The epilogue, but yes. We really want, as we move forward, to be driven by what the community of Classic players want. Classic is an experience that only exists because players wanted it. It would never have happened if players hadn't had such a strong demand for it, hadn't expressed how much they wanted it. So we're looking to see, what does the community want to see next? What do you want to see next? Communicate that to us. Like, I spend time reading forums, reading Reddit, going places, social media, seeing what people have to say. All of us on the team do. I know sometimes players get the impression we don't. We definitely spend time reading that stuff, finding out what's going on. We have people who give us reports on what's being said in social media. So let us know what it is you want next. And that survey that leaked is part of trying to find out what is that thing that players want to see next. And based on that, we'll make a decision. I can say that we're really happy with Season of Mastery as the kind of the first of its type, where we tried to make a slightly different World of Warcraft for players to experience. And we're excited to do new things like that. A good example of that is what I talked about earlier about for Wrathichian, we're going to have an opportunity to do the harder heroic dungeons for the drops that used to be in the Naxxramas 10-player dungeon, 10-player raid. That's an idea that only came possible because we're drawing ideas out of Season of Mastery. So, well, this worked in Season of Mastery. Let's try to see if we can do it here. So we're constantly looking at those ideas, and Season of Mastery helped us kind of figure out what was possible, and we're looking to do more things like that in the future. But again, can't promise anything. You, on the other hand, can go on to social media, can go to things like that league survey and give us your opinion, and that will help us to decide.
Excellent.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time, Kris. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Kris.
Awesome answers. Thank you. And looking forward to Wrathichian next week.
Yeah, me too. Me too. We're all looking forward to it. Everybody's crazy about it on my guild right now.
It's awesome.
Rightly so. Yeah, thanks again, Kris.
Yeah,
that was brilliant. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.